Good evening, Scott here, known as Cantaloupe to some online. I'm bringing a subject to you that's interesting to me. It might be of interest to you or someone you know. And this one might be disturbing to some viewers. Trigger warning. I just found something kind of disturbing. I'm not even going to go into detail, but got me thinking about certain types of crimes that happen, things that you may have seen in movies, hopefully only in movies. And I want to bring up a subject that's connected to this kind of thing. There is something called a circular problem. And I arrived at this idea just now, actually, thinking about possible causes. I like to understand the causes of things in general, cause and effect relationships, especially so that I can, protect myself and control them when necessary. Certain crimes are circular. What I mean by that is there are predictable basic factors that influence people's behavior. There's only so many of these factors, and while, for example, the crime of abusing minors may not appear directly connected to economics, it took me a moment to kind of understand this, because my feeling is that almost everything with just a couple of degrees of separation at most ties back to economics somehow. And I seem to be right about this. Prove me wrong. In this case, the pathological abuse of young people, which can happen occasionally, is often the result of trauma onto that person, the perpetrator. It's circular. What I said is they were abused. Usually this can cause that behavior, I think. And the question becomes, why is there a pattern of it? Why did they get abused? Becomes the question. And you see, if you trace this back, if one or two steps, it becomes economic. Hear me out. So what happens when a grandparent is struggling financially? Let's go back to like the 60s, the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and a person is slipping through the cracks with their family, not making ends meet. What do they start drinking? Okay, obviously, everybody's drinking already. And what happens when you drink? This is just a hypothesis. This isn't a factual story, but this is how I believe it happens on occasion. When you drink, you lose your inhibitions. The things that you wouldn't normally do, your impulses, they all come out without any kind of hesitation, without any kind of checks and balances. If you get drunk enough, you're not responsible anymore. Your brain isn't functioning at that point. And if it happens enough, such as in the case of chronic alcoholism and people who aren't necessarily too swift to begin with, you end up with some very, very damaged kids. Those kids grow up, and there's a way that behavior sometimes gets multiplied, magnified, and you can end up with some very scary stuff going on. It's rare, I hope. I don't really know. I don't have statistics, and I don't want statistics, but I'm saying it can happen. You've seen the movie. You've seen Silence of the Lambs. You've seen, I don't need to bring up a whole bunch of examples, but it happens. We know this. It happens. Serial killers, serial rapists, unfortunately. I'm going to end on the note of reminding myself and anybody who's watching this that the challenge and the opportunity, as always, are to err on the side of protecting everybody's liberty, because these are the trying times. When there's a bad apple of that magnitude, it is difficult. It takes more than bravery. It takes, I don't know how you do it, but you have to. You got to find a way to not ruin it for everybody. You got to find a way. That's the job. So, with that said, alcohol, economic hardship, it's the same old story. It may not happen this time, it may not happen this generation, but that person's grandkids, maybe. How far do you have to look at it? Understand what happened. Understand why it happened. Substances are a huge problem. Anyway, reach out with questions or comments to whitehoutrobot@gmail.com. Thank you.